Yeah, okay, is everyone here? No, who are we missing? Gidley and Kevin.
Where is he?
No, Judge. Like
Oh, Kevin Clarke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, great. I just sent the one I see. Everyone let me know you're good. Can I just get a thumbs up from everyone when we get the doc? Yossi. Good, great. Neoliberal agriculture consolidates power in the hands of mega corporations, compromising local food, degrading ecosystems, and containing critical reactions oriented NDT food market solutions exerted dispossession of the globalization, state policy, concentrate against the corporations, markets, fast agro, industry prices for food potential, agricultural diversity, can now longer, BCC and transition sustainable agro, be the result of mobilization at different levels, as well as transformation of market systems, above regulation, growing neoliberalism, having condition breaks global specific situations, neoliberal cannot be never us on how this is also government action, modernization, agriculture, innovation to provide future capitalist economy, include black fastness and food, import chemicals, concentration by mega corporation, neoliberalized, central class exploitation farmers have been subordinated critical left implicit the specificities politically seen from under pressure because of the combination of free market and protectionists and advocates continue to be the safer partnership for private sector. The state remains central needs to be understood not as isolated but the locus of power. Public policies continue critical reaction appease opposition due to discourse against food security. Digital platforms craft local farmers as market subjects to be inserted into capital. They force farmers to adhere to market behaviors by bundling products, banning informal seed exchange, and tracking them. Remote digital networks that eviscerates farmers' social relations and stabilizes food supply brooks. A 21 icon never the shortage to create the subject by behaviors monitored from digital platforms to safety social solidarity by multiple support informal seed reciprocity among African small actors viewed as suboptimal by maritime provided central as well social function maximize these to local application while sustaining a real collective no access necessary to technical body change material alpha social values revolutionary sets on battle agro processes restart market capital necessary jobs into capital eroding social relations trade by agricultural digital farming platforms zero options for privatization and development farmers are left in states self-sustaining in the face of climate first exploit farmer liberal model the past risk autonomous smallholders maintaining religious smallholders massive destiny while developing social regulation to secure market north platformization assumes farmers benefit from active dependence is intensified through bundling products and behavioral measures this year farmers towards the model these continue to green through which the proposition of ag tech rewarding farmers is body socially embedded the digital farmer offers digital stations. This is a technical market fix that dissolves the stickiness of informal institutions that impede capital platform interventions compromise local food systems and expand industrial ag. This can only be solved by reclaiming and retooling food sovereignty. ETC group and 20 digital agro ecosystems biodigital living landscape is shaped by data digital interventions have profound impact marginal life farmers expand industrial ag shift to surveillance capital says giant clever stated for producing new capital industrial ag least food vulnerable disruptive structures mining of our implement digital food designs also agros or average food cost shortages synthetic molecular communication or mutually beneficial relations but biodigital zero modified food but modify agro ecosystems by avoiding definition GMOs zero side subsets digitalization food farming land grabbing exploitative relations lack of projections worse exacerbating inequalities revising corporate capture food reclaiming and calls for building alternative food subsidy native food movements for justice keys the defense of farmers creating relations and nurture population taking back data is critical industrial ag culminates in extinction Sanderson and Cox 21 there's more carbon dioxide at any point even in mid-pandemic records last time sea level is 80 feet higher than the planet 7 degrees warmer hope is avians did not exist our sisters are collapse undermining ability to support like big ag lies at the heart accounts for 14.5% of GHG 60% of oxygen 50% of methane to scale industrial ag or undermining capacity to support life of forest loss and species seems to have increased industrial ag filled up as ag industrialized to become hard to find fresh water industrial ag is rendering land uninhabitable with the corn belt has lost its topsoil runoff created death and carrying into socio-ecological collapse it's collapsing the diversity of crops risking a global ecosystem cascade malady 21 compared with wider biology I need to see solutions diversity station not exist without local knowledge environment restriction ag biology resilience to climate change ag biology is essential to survival to equilibrium threatens monopolies control sea markets that jeopardizes ag biology sea monopolies that stimulate industrial varieties criminalize heterogeneity see single species be resilient if there were diverse varieties see with gene banks that provide some assurances and varietal diversity on the farm the lost crops to evolve the biology diversity disappearing in single causes industrial varieties and monocultures are susceptible to climate stress it drives overuse of pesticides destroying microbial populations and collapses the biosphere Medhavi adult 21 will have a great bearing on life industrialization post pose a threat to soil. No quality pesticides contribute to soil production with harmful substances such as cadmium. Pesticide changes soil biomass quality is a factor for growth crop plants. Pesticides change in soil microflora. Food supply is a problem of distribution, not scarcity. Precision agriculture's attempts to maximize yield compromises biodiversity, food diversity, restore social relations and resilience bios. And 19 a conventional representatives radical overproduction, crushing prices, and the consolidation contradicts the rhetorical framework of food security, nitrogen scarcity, or distribution. Food sovereignty movements are highlighted capitalist act as a 10-year population to meet the people monocropping meets the field uniform problems on individual farmer. The problems of system utilization makes the market choice more viable and ecological one. There are problems raised by capitalist food system digitalization, consolidation, and the stress of communities. The process of externalization no longer be supported with limit cheapness of labor environment and breakthrough reconnection and facilitate complexity attack, compromising productivity activities and find ways to allow greater floral and faunal complexity around fields using automation and to negotiate multi-species. The fields of position can encourage unlimited complexity, intensification, capitalist organization, normalizing industrial activities responsible for the problems posed to solve granted later after the chance to do something revolutionary, build a new relations with alien species and one another. Thus, the plan the United States federal government should substantially increase its prohibitions on business practices that undermine food sovereignty by at least expanding the scope. The Victoria antitrust laws, antitrust law is a vital lever for restoring food sovereignty by deconcentrating chains of ownership cast. In 19 food sovereignty activists assert that should democratize farm resources and move towards multinational agribusiness away from farmers. Farmers are all driven by ag and equal market powers, imperative to federal government enforce antitrust contract, force farmers to buy seeds from a handful of companies. When agribusiness monopolization and persists expensive farmers benefit FTC antitrust divisions lack interpret statutes. Farmers are licensed and receiving on for price of parity prices are consolidated agribusiness now fixed prices below cost. Food sovereignty advocacy judicial review of mergers approved installing food sovereignty requires prioritizing farmers' needs. The law must guarantee a fair price of food. The judiciary must consider the restraint of trade and merger approval as opposed to farmers and enforce antitrust in favor of farmers. Its analytical frame is key to balances innovation with competition. Landowners at all seizing competition law and care engage IP practices. EC companies are search of licensing, reduce farmers' options, owners, dependent trace assert market power through cross licensing, permits agreements prohibit saving seats, limiting competition. Other anti-competitive practices include exclusive dealing, anti-second loyalty, rebates, competition law counterclaims have been not successful. But the court reduces scope, patent accession, police sale, one jet seat does not also rights entry, generic development, access to general companies, and incentives, data packages, raises relevant competition use and issues in activist contract. I'd like to smaller shares of revenue going to the farmer line share. I do with the C companies holding rights to tech involved. The fashion reinforced by financialization, commodities facilitated by private insurance company, when the commodity futures sugar price fluctuation, putting farmers at the mercy of C companies play platforms enhance market power through IP rights and inter-platform competition rivalry between C platforms and inter-platform competition folks over within where firms evolve new C's obtaining assets trace from the platform competition authority should promote also inter-platform competition. C companies possibility generic competition. C is limited with a structure promoting competition law might promote alternative platforms antitrust grants movements the chance to govern assets democratically. Do not forego all policy debates. Pinky the 21 years trouble sovereignty in the state land sees a transformative political project promoting policies cannot be dismissed from food sovereignty debates of activists dismiss the state engage in policies to build alternatives is omitted in other policies. Antitrust in the U.S. while considered a way to save capital challenging agribusiness can reorganize economics. London encourages activists not to forget the same confronting corporations. Antitrust challenges citizens by targeting firms to check for property. Antitrust can grant movements a chance to redistribute assets so they can be governed democratically. Promoting antitrust make private property part of alternative economic relations. Agriculture can be bad to status business. Such practices and capital intensive production while building alternatives from cooperatives to antitrust private property is being questioned. London thinks strategically about standing property, how to suspend production, favor alternatives, food sovereignty, such as private property potential to move beyond the sovereignties. Revolutionary qualities. London just attention how to suspend relations generate new ones by working to sustain property to reject. Outright is problematic. Actors must suspend both over time. Building food sovereignty requires state power. It's not mutually exclusive with popular movements, but believing that it is revives a neoliberal illusion that the state and society are distinct. Shadow. And 15, there's no one sphere regulating markets or constructing farming flows to capital represent a shift in power. Food sovereignty must simultaneously invoke national control over our country to imply state sovereignty, people's control and popular vision. There need not be mutually exclusive food sovereignty. Activists work for political change and multiple scale sovereignty becomes a small, malleable, negotiable power for which movement sees against the stated sovereign actors. Local work is necessary, but it cannot replace organized effort to turn state to food sovereignty. Few bodies have the power to undertake forms essential to food sovereignty is comprehensive ag reform, renegotiating national tax fund research and food services rather than regarding food sovereignty as of the state or of community. Sovereignty is relational, leave room for different actors. Food sovereignty challenge the foundational illusion of you live in the state and society are separated. Sovereignty is built on state institutions, civil society, pop culture, and language in which people understand daily lives is vastly different from narrowly defined policy change or locus of power. The multiple spaces in history focusing on institutions, civil society, food sovereignty must into engaging spaces, food sovereignty are happening from above and by the national government below because citizen institutions such as key to food sovereignty over the long-term sovereignty require an interactive state society approach to sovereignty push bounds. Current rights include food to rights to sovereignty and a pleasant social movements call upon the state to exert authority to realize rights for the certain decision-making levels. The state is a complex forum for struggle and possibility and essential and transcending capital, responding to climate crises and building food sovereignty, rootlage, and 18 rejection denies the flex of reform. The state is to appreciate contingent form of state possibilities of social contestation, state sovereignty, struggle possibility. It says essential for transcending capital, political critique, reform has amount of power to new configurations by viewing the state and some institutional structures which social groups develop policy strategy, be of openings for progressive mobilization, Latin America, peak-time movements, challenge colonial structures, new level of distortion, recovery, state-space, social moves, and imperfect for resisting pressure and long difference. We have KC that accommodate non-essential equations and correlations, navigation, subject need alternative, measuring and stable seriously, imperative for rescaling from the state might be reconfigured as responsive for local interventions while prevent architecture coalition movement across coast food sovereignty constitutes a key made articulated by national farmers movements and international networks such as the Vietnam Peace Native Protesters, stop one food parts of sovereignty, confirm government, agribusiness, livelihoods, indigenous people, food sovereignty, involve circles like this place into structuring new level laws, economic growth and economic states without government food sovereignty is not more just lesser prone to failure associated state practice, little often practice scale up where negation of states taking place is required to claim public welfare, alternative social, economic, environmental practice contests, specific historical process, perceived food sovereignty by states and public social structures, access to institution, food sovereignty is dynamic, ongoing, and open-ended. Sorry, that's marked at open-ended. A bit of that left.
We'll start prep. All right, that was 42 seconds. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so what anti-competitive conduct does a plan disallow?
Conduct that harms food sovereignty.
Okay, how do you
I
determine
can
that?
list like examples of that.
How do you determine that? What is the new standard the court uses to determine whether something harms food sovereignty?
So part of our argument is that food sovereignty means different things to different people. So like the movement for food sovereignty in Venezuela might define it differently than a movement in a different country. But our argument is that food sovereignty is based on how individual people conceive their relationship to and control over food. So basically,
Is there any limitation? Is there any limitation to which people fall under the rule or which quote unquote companies fall under the rule that the app establishes?
I don't know what you mean by quote unquote company.
Hey y'all, sorry. Turner can't hear.
Oh, no, okay.
He's out of the Zoom.
Also, we need to turn the volume up. Sorry, can't hear Kevin. I think Kevin is frozen too. And we also can't hear you even though you're unmuted. Oh, sorry, other Kevin. Yeah. It looks frozen again.
Okay. Sorry, Julian was roasting me for not muting, but I felt that I should unmute because just to make it clear we're not prepping or anything.
Oh. It like momentarily froze again. I don't know if like hopefully it'll be fine. But
Sorry about that, everybody.
no worries. I had my timer stopped at 2:13, but I don't know how much of it you heard, Turner. So I'm open to.
I heard conduct that harms food sovereignty.
Okay, well, that was way
Is
earlier.
that like the first thing I said, like in the whole process? Okay.
Yep. I'm sorry.
Should we just like start over then?
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Or like set it at like, I don't know what that would be, like two.
Yeah,
like-
we could just start over. I mean,
Okay.
rather than having the specific second. Okay. So what would fall under the anti-competitive conduct that's banned under the F?
So the AF targets conduct that harms food sovereignty. Our point is that different people define food sovereignty different, because what food sovereignty has to do with is like control over one's food supply. And so the way that a farmer in Venezuela or a community in Venezuela might define control over their food supply is different than in Uganda. Yet, okay.
If I'm a farmer in the United States and I say that let's say controlled forest fires are the way that I do farming, what would be the legal defense of that, or how would you strike that down?
I don't. What are you? So like some.
So you're like, okay, well, there are multiple definitions of food sovereignty. Like, where do you draw the line? Like, what is the standard the AF establishes for anti-competitive conduct?
The AF targets conduct by monopolies and those with market power. It lists, our evidence lists examples of things. If you're curious about like what this really looks like, it's things like, mergers that have targeted small farmers, anti-competitive licensing practices with seeds, refusing seed saving by farmers across the world. Akash probably has more examples than I do.
Okay, so is there any limit to this? I mean, like, are you just like, oh, like we'll prevent mergers, we'll stop seed saving? Like, is there like a list of things the AF does?
Like
Or
there are practices,
anything that we can
anti-competitive practices
as hurting
Sorry.
food sovereignty and
Yeah, anti-competitive practices are diverse and varied, so I can't provide a strict list
Sorry.
because, as you've said, oh, you're frozen
the
again.
internet's not.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Obviously.
my bad. Okay, like our internet just cut out for a second. The last thing I heard was food sovereignty.
Well, okay, I think I know what I was saying. Anti-competitive practices are diverse and varied, so I can't give you a set list because, like you just said, anyone could argue, like people could simply shift their practices. So if the plan only targeted mergers, and then Monsanto decided to ramp up its IP game, then both of those would have to be targeted.
Interesting. All right. So what is the current standard that we use to assess the agriculture industry that the plan would expand?
The consumer welfare standard.
And now what is, okay, so, I know we've kind of gone around this by saying like, okay, well, there's like a set list, but the AF could be interpreted as food sovereignty just holistically. Like, if not the CWS, how does a court determine like other antitrust challenges? The AF expands that.
Well, so similarly, in the context of the CWS, the court merely evaluates how a certain conduct harms consumer price and output. In the context of the AF, they evaluate how a certain practice harms food sovereignty using a variety of sources, including how the parties who are harmed at hand define food sovereignty and whether they've lost control over their food sources.
Cool. we'll take the last prep, which is like 10 more seconds.
It probably will.
We took like another 10 seconds, so that's 8:10 now.
Okay, give me Kevin, please mute on Discord. I'm going to send it after I get set up.
Let me just gonna go to the bathroom. So while you're setting up, Julian.
Actually, I'll fill my water while you're doing that also.
Okay, should be sent. While people are getting that up, 7 the case. Okay. Everyone got a document?
I don't think we have.
Oh
Northwestern.
shit, my volume's not turned up. Repeat it.
I don't think we have Northwestern.
Yeah, I was about to say. I can't tell if they're just hidden behind their laptops or the big desktop.
It is.
I think they're out of there.
Yeah, they are. They are. I was just joking.
It is true that Akash could just hide behind that monitor. It is significantly larger than him.
Nina, we're still waiting on Akash, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, now Kevin is using the restroom. Are we still waiting for Akash?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are there like people in there, or is it just like you're just in the big room alone? I don't know how it works.
Nah, we got a few people, but for the most part, yeah, we had a few more people in here, and then they realized that what was going on, and they were just like, man, fuck this.
Oh. Okay, Kasha's back. I think we just have to download the doc and whatever.
Sounds good. Give me some sort of visual when you're all good, and I'll resume everybody's.
We're good. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, everyone. All right, sweet. Expedient scope of core interest laws of first declared German and FTC acted in action by Congress. The explicit definition of anti-competitive conduct includes in 21 publicity surrounding an investigation by Congress for violations of antitrust laws proposing legislation named it. Expanded the scope of current antitrust laws under 3 Sherman declared that the FTC Congress reviewed existing antitrust laws under laws needed to be strengthened. Anti-competitive business practices are horizontal and single firm conduct. FTC innovate anti-competitive practices include agreements, monopolization, horizontal conduct to together that can lead to higher prices or hinder other businesses from entering the market to monopolize trade or to acquire a dominant position by preventing new entry sector-specific regulations not part of the core antitrust laws. FTB 21, the core antitrust laws show the overall coverage of the other laws attributed to the broad spectrum of the federal regulations. Some of these also directly related to particular sections. Others are of different areas and or scope than the core statutes. They are often contradictory to the policy of the act. For example, patent and copyright laws, antitrust laws can find the patent or copyright in addition to the anti-competitive statutes. There are many statutes regulating the face of the actual conduct of business. For example, FTC that would label the entities are not related to the general area of antitrust. Core antitrust laws, or general TRR and 7, the Department of Justice Antitrust Division released a statement. New or different rules are not needed for industries, unlike some other areas. Laws of core antitrust laws are general in nature, apply to many different industry sector specific regulations. Cause a qualitative split in the topic literature. Expose the topic voters. Shalansky 2. Regulations should move from the sector specific judges in the SEC to the more general regime of antitrust law. Debate addresses process of more general regime from industry specific regulation. The more important substantive role has most institutions as general antitrust authorities, but negative for limits. The plan justifies any possible regulation on any private institution to be an expansion of antitrust law that unlimits the topic to include tax policy and the government liquidating into the billions of companies in the United States. Next off, strong now. Economy strong now. Schneider and 4-1. Fear that the war in Ukraine, which the U.S. economy is given, which is continuing a steady return to normal. The labor supply continue to fade. The labor supply concerns continue to fade. The job market is on a solid trajectory. Robust demand pulls more workers with stable wage growth. More telling citizens from the bond market remain healthy. Is premature to start the recession. That does not look like a late cycle economy. A mid-cycle economy. The business cycle has room to run the Fed sector remains far below the level that would discourage investment. Antitrust smothers economic recovery. Ripness in 21 proposal towards the end of the year says economy friction to M&A stock capital markets for reduced innovation, pressure growth that recycle runtime recovery during ongoing pandemic. The UDA prevailed nearly 84% of merger challenges win rate only improves. More recent cases because of legal standards favorable legislation will lower the standards and stop an deal giving greater tradition would reduce investments into fuel growth. CWS promotes business growth standard for in 20 punishment should be for those that raise prices or prevent new goods. The CWS eligible to the company which should reduce the cost of living and improve products, made it harder for businesses to do their way to the top. Through the worst economic crisis memory that we need a competition free the threat of arbitrarily government meddling, extinction scapegoats. In 20, the economy the likelihood of world depression is changing power, possibilities for government fading with the growth of China and Russia. The dominance cannot be taken for granted. China's beginning to modernizing carriers are vulnerable to Russia and China hypersonics are game over the pandemic's wire contraction. However, China have been less effective and maintain a better response. China is likely to come out better off the pandemic without design pattern racing include multiple arms such as hypersonic cyber weapons, AWS and space versus leaders could launch towards many mishaps and accidents to scramble these two civil war countries in Eurasia, Africa, and Latin America becoming battlegrounds for proxy conflicts. Next off, the 50 states and territories should substantially increase its prohibitions on business practices that undermine sovereignty, but that undermine food sovereignty by at least expanding the scope of its core antitrust laws. Solves HLR 20. The 50 states antitrust principles each has statutes outlawing anti-competitive behavior, and they can enforce federal law as parents pay to anti-competitive restraints are immune from the scrutiny if they are attributable to the state. The court invokes federalism validated by Congress to refrain from preempting state attorneys have taken antitrust action. States oppose Sprint and T-Mobile compacts now and are effective or taken Ludwig in 19 states coordinate with our investigation to other states. And AAG has created an antitrust committee responsible for antitrust policy to help cover the cost of persecuting the states under the counterarguments. The agreements that supply any settlements probably allocated for further fund. the NAG's Milk and Volkswagen Fund. Next off, the United States executive should mandate the sustainable food practices through the Packard and Stockyards Act within the scope of the DOJ and FTC's antitrust authority solves Kellaway in 21. There are laws on the books we just haven't been enforcing them. First step would be to appoint enforcers to lead antitrust agencies, issuing sharper rules under the PSA to pass rules that give contract coverage justice and cut loopholes for misreading as reasonable business decision. Enforcers could bring criminal charges when they employ persons rather than fines. The DOJ can direct enforcers to break up mergers when four firms dominate 40% of all sales. FTC has extensive power to achieve fair competition that would do far more to dismantle corporate dominance. None of these need approval from Congress. They just require political will from Biden's appointees. Next up, antitrust fractures industry collaboration breaks up conservation agreements. Got in 16 antitrust and research such as resource transportation and group boycotts and maintenance of prices and flood markets, tropical forest support, 50% of Earth's biodiversity. This DIA has a biodiversity impact, which is like closest to the case. Oh yeah, facts actually. Just gonna keep reading it. Without protection from antitrust laws, producer collaborations cannot preserve critically threatened resources of businesses responding to creative collaboration, solve sustainability, resource depletion, and climate change. Probably skip that Scott card then. Okay, next off, FTC's focus on international outreach to globally coordinate investigation possible all in 19 agencies and metropolitan agencies have a little bit of resources. They can't just keep on producing one always out to ask the incremental benefits of this investigation over 5 others at each stage. What is the incremental value we got to focus? AI will transform every endeavor, productivity, growth, health, care, sustainability, poverty, much more yet. Change company odds and uncertainty to realize the promise that we must build trust about trust is marginal tech. It's neither good nor bad, nor bad. AI are just tools, but the evidence of positive and negative is never greater. It's time for the to adopt a new framework embedded in the US FTC. There was a reinforced bias and surveillance. This will require to consultations to governments and FTC to engage in broad discussions with other governments. Building policy that brings all these areas together in a coherent fashion to address AI is particularly important. A tool we use is hearings up to FTC antitrust enforcement trades off Reinhardt et al. In 21. The FTC will face research antitrust litigation, expensive and laborious process requiring millions and a large army of staff attorneys taking many years to accomplish. FTC can only litigate a handful of antitrust matters at a time. Even with extra resources, FTC will still have to get the cases carefully. Upside and downside risks of AI or existential effective governance is key. Same as in 21. Existential risk looms. AI embeddedness in military, educational, government is networks or area or where which can be diffused. Even systemic lack of understanding does not lead to regulation. We could make enough resources. However, the positive side: enhanced automation, climate, disaster response, co-op, and geopolitics and AI resources, both justice, health, environment, education, governance. Everything civilization has to offer is a human intelligence. AI might eradicate war, disease, and poverty would be the biggest threat. Human history also be the last unless we avoid the risk. Next off, the F reinforces the tyranny of policy relevance that ensures war. And that ensures war. The alternative is the problem posing rather than problem solving paradigm. Just in 9, common refrain must be policy relevant. Ideas are very recent innovation. University was to teach their students not to conduct research. The very pernicious assumption distortions encourage to study some things better. They later virtues which evades one's institution and career versus the threat of a fate as a martial scholar and capable of employment. Policy relevant how to predefine what is relevant, turned into evidence making that academics will tend to be selected by the policy board based on whether they will endorse the overall interest that are prepare legal religion of US imperialism was not part of whatever considered persons he added to the policy mix about their careers around institutionalizing American hegemony qualifies them to act as advisor to the pride's critical voices are unlikely to ever hear the call to serve. At stake is problem solving. A critical theory generates suggestions as to how the system can be run within critical theories. He's find why the system exists in the first place. Policy relevance, she's in the most structured form. But it becomes so dominant and perilous space to think about the orders on hustle. How should they suggest measures to securitize every life? We also need to fully respect work that will never be policy relevant because it refuses concerns on agendas. The case, no ag impact burger in 17. Species have blossom all experiences digitally increases in the numbers. We might double the species on Earth if the species came into existence by hybridization. Not one of these species that suddenly disappear. Nobody had made an estimate of the current speciation rate based on a presumption that the present day is the same in the long-term past. Is not so obvious for plants. Large biological camps are going on. Plants can stabilize soil. Water, carbon, and non-native could be better at these ecosystems are degraded by the loss of diversity. That doesn't follow once you take the gains. No biodiversity impact. Marison 21. Emphasis in worst scenarios. Apocalypse is inevitable because the institute would have to lose all species within a century, and then for 540 more years, that these years into the future will be as inept as biodiversity. Every severe declines disproportionately increase average decline less than 30% are crashing to move to net zero emissions. The U.S. can spend what it already spent. 24 seconds.
24 seconds.
Yeah.
Can you read this last part?
Regulatory content for Solomon T. Dorsey et al. In 19, intercustody is controversy included in this application of reaches of less versions that have version of first including offensive and defensive forces may fail to act in a way that aligns with their objectives incorporating of goals. Only exacerbates these early actions indicates the public trust factors fail to explain significant percentages of enforcement. Marked enforcement. I was just trying to grab the thing. It's so wild that while I was reading the 1 and C, that line that's like, oh, like, you know, like critical theorists will like never do the military thing. I literally got an email from like the Marine Corps, like at the same time on my phone. I was like, what the fuck? What is going on?
What was that last card you were reading on Kevin's computer?
Kevin is sending it.
Okay. Was that was on case though? I couldn't really catch it.
Yeah, put it on the case.
Yeah, okay. Okay, fine.
Just let me get that.
Yeah. Are you good though?
Mhm.
What is the violation on this T argument?
A couple things. Antitrust under the agricultural sector is defined by the Packard and Stockards Act, not Clayton Sherman FTC. Your plan does not expand those laws. That's the first violation. Second,
Wait.
sector-specific regulation.
Hold on. So you just like you think, oh, I get it. Your violation is you think anything under agriculture cannot expand Sherman Clayton or the FTC.
The plan would not expand Sherman.
Okay,
Clayton.
fine. Next arg.
Next one is that the AF is not a business practice. It is a sector-specific regulation, which doesn't expand the core antitrust laws, which must be economy-wide and apply to all businesses.
Okay, fine.
Generalizable
Gotcha.
business practice, not a sector.
Gotcha. You skipped this Scott card on this collaboration DA, correct? Like the second one?
Yeah, no, we didn't read the extinction card to
Okay,
do
so far what you've said is there are arrangements to do resource conservation, but they need to be exempted from antitrust. They're not exempted now, and the AF has nothing to do with this. In fact, it would permit them under a standard that's solely about food sovereignty, because your evidence says that these are agreements to preserve critically threatened resources.
Basically, the plan is so opaque that no one knows what it is. You could basically construe all the actions that our Scott evidence outlines as harming food sovereignty.
Okay, but you don't think that this impact is external to the case, obviously, because you didn't.
I mean, you know, it depends. I mean, it depends on how the JC explains the impact. This is about like group collaboration and CSR agreements.
Okay, what
yeah.
kind of FTCDA, what kind of regulations will they negotiate globally about AI?
Our evidence suggests that there are some values questions that we use to program superintelligence that we need to regulate.
Like what? Like your evidence is talking about like there's a risk that like China will integrate AI into its military. Like, do we promulgate norms to stop AI integration into militaries?
I don't know about that. I think, you know, the evidence says that we need to have industry regulations holistically about superintelligence. What those look like is a little bit opaque because we haven't developed it yet, but we need to
Definitely not what your ev is about, because the uniqueness evidence is about FTC international outreach with other countries.
I mean, you know, like, I don't understand why that disproves the idea that they're creating a regulatory environment internationally for AI regulations.
Okay, like again, what kind of regulations?
I mean, the problem is like, okay, it's hard to pinpoint specific regulations for technology that has not been invented yet. Our evidence says that, you know,
Okay.
the existential risk of superintelligence, because it's an emerging industry,
Fine.
means that like, you know, an infinite,
The status of the things.
conditional.
Okay, and you think that this executive counterplan competes based on expand the scope?
Expand the scope. Yeah, like.
Okay.
Regulations, yeah.
Gotcha. We're gonna take breath. I ask you if the counterplans were conditional? Yes, thumbs up. Okay, we're done.
Yeah.
6:23.
I just couldn't say it the first time around.
We'll have to close it just to attach it.
I'm assuming everyone's good for an order. Got a thumbs up from Turner. Okay, that's everyone. Order is case, T, states counterplan, PSA counterplan, K, econ DA, FTCDA, compact,
Sorry, could you repeat it from the top?
yeah, no problem. Case, T, states counterplan, antitrust pick, the sector counterplan, the K, the econ DA, FTCDA, compacts DA.
Actually, let's take one more second.
Yeah.
Prep. Sorry. Okay. Yeah.
I'm assuming everyone's good, or do we need? Okay. If you're not, speak now. Okay. Drop the soil quality, causes salt extinction, pesticides, damage soil biomass, which is crucial to environmental balance. Soil pollution proliferates disease, which cascades. Yes, ag impact 1 extinction and accelerates ongoing biodiversity crisis. Climate change and exceeds every planetary boundary necessary to sustain life that class and soil health, which is an existential threat. Some mobility carbon extended above 2 market evidence. Mega corporations integrate farmers across the globe into food supply chains, which exacerbates structural violence, biodiversity impact. Yes, there is one. It does not assume industrial agriculture that exacerbates it in total and exceeds planetary boundaries. Sea diversity is distinct. 2 different seed varieties are necessary to adapt to ecological emergencies like climate change, droughts, food and crop diseases, which cause extinction. Filatova and Mulvaney regulatory capture is false, wonderful fiat. The affirmative must get to fiat and fourth resources, agency discretion and good faith court application. Otherwise, we lose every debate since Congress agencies and the courts or reverse to the blame to the nation. Food sovereignty debates must discern the best proposal as Pankey. 2, it's indiminishable. We've read evidence saying that food sovereignty can be incorporated into antitrust as Pankey and Cass. 3, deterrence. The affirmative announced that companies should consider food sovereignty. They'll comply out of fear of several damages. Topicality. We meet the plan applies economy wide since the plan applies since it targets practices that undermine food sovereignty. The plan expands antitrust laws. This does not mean the Canada plan competes those because this is just a plausible reading of the plan text. We meet business practice. It is not sector specific. It's in the plan that's most objective. Antitrust seeks to promote competition and prevent market errors. Its scope is up for debate. Waller and Mente 89. The U.S. have an all with the scope and remain seated with the idea of competition laws. Gained universal sense competition laws is premise on competitive market economy and see from private action with the review of antitrust modifies law, not laws, not law. The affirmative broadens the core antitrust laws application. Coons 21 of the 3 core antitrust laws. Sherman Clinton at the FCA. Anti-competitive practices. It's a stuff to limit competition. Kimani and Shapiro 93. Anti-competitive practices which affirm restraint to interfering competition. A preferred one limits and outground. Economy-wide answers. Economy-wide affirmatives of no answer to innovation is the antitrust pick or the state's counterblame. 2, predictability. Their evidence is not exclusive. It has the intent to include horizontal and singular firm conduct, but that does not exclude the functional limits. Regulate states. The cap K are sufficient to preserve affirmative ground. Reasonability good is good enough. They lead to a race to arbitrary limits. The state's counterblame remediation. The counterblame remediation to both. It shows a link to FTC trade-off. It is the states enforce federal law. In 7, instead of having the FTC expend resources for remediation to the plan and let the states enforce 50 state fiat as a voting issue. Uniformity is not literature. It kills fairness. The law to use between state and federal antitrust conditionality to voting issue. It's used to tweet encourages running the strategies which kills fairness and education. It links to the compact dissad and the econ dissad as well because functionally the plan it can't solve the F1 preemption. The counterpart is preempted by patent law. Same 14 state and liability can be both state and federal laws. Federal law is the law preempted the extended both liability for counteractual and federal law. State law liability with standard the purpose of federal law. State federal courts are not to rule that state interest is preempted. It does both liability interference which federal law not permit a liability a conflict of rights when state law stands up for the purpose of justice of communists. 2, chilling state restrictions on patent rights will be idiosyncratic and compromise food sovereignty. Focal 15 centralized patent regulation laws will lose one state of line particularly uniform state of seeking redress from an inferior another state. A decentralized system would contain inconsistent regs would offer less efficiency imaginative state as in total laws while some adopt a similar law states different situations in the law would create complex legal situations related to legal discovery and trial based would lead to inconsistent litigation of cases and complexity. It also causes uncertainty and influence of patent decision the patent in the first place. State regulation cannot exist in the same field with the federal government's exclusive control over patent regulation. Now the advantage counterplan permutation to both permutation to the counterplan. Permutation to the counterplan is an amendment to the core antitrust laws. Permutation to the plan and the counterplan's agent enforces core antitrust laws or those protect competition. It's beyond the big 3 Bowl and 16 courts also protect competition consumers of business from 7 markets. Lender, German, Clinton, RBA, FTC, HSR. Core means central, non-core must be distinct in kind, not merely identity. Covenant R 16 live the remaining course that the dictionary devices sexual often medical participant by different nature. Counterplays must compete based on both text and function. Otherwise, the affirmative loses their ability to leverage the 1 and 1AC non-competitive counterplays or infinite and non-predictable. The core antitrust laws biggest voting issue captures all functional benefits to antitrust and literature, leaving the affirmative without a deficit. Links to all the net benefits. FTC counterplan. It links to FTC because the counterplan says FTC in the counterplan text. United States executive and it hinders collaboration because it does antitrust and we're impact turning BISCON. Antitrust is key. 1, food sovereignty is restricted through process of market dependency, which are enabled by market power. The sheer size of mega corporations guarantees their influence over the supply chain. Only deconcentrating the economy can solve that. That's CAS 2 patents immunized. The Lianos evidence says that other fields of law besides antitrust cannot deal with it. 3, the rule of reason is key. Only the rule of reason provides a sophisticated balancing test to determine the existence of market power that's key to target mega corporations that are oppressing farmers instead of the farmers trying to innovate new seed and crop varieties. The counterplan can't discriminate the two because it compromises food sovereignty in the U.S. because if a farmer tries to patent an invention, they probably won't be able to. It's also key to target product bundling and exclusive dealing in the form of seed saving. The Lianos antitrust rule of reason is key. Lane 15 talked about effectively redundant antitrust taxation. The way it's given about misuse heard words of federal target important and benefits. And means the test will appear to be hybrid. So the patent I take benefits or excuse with the skipping exhaustion antitrust misuse of screwdrivers give it use to hammer other tools of a student, while it explicitly invites courts to consider the active silent, active most important patent interest really well done, rather than measure the burden during this court consider interest, about as just as anti-competitive best, market against the unity and risks being over and inclusive, about any good circulating action by imposing competitive restrictions on British system, argue the restrictions to be fair. The alternatives to look at whether the penalty justification for anti-competitive and actions on state restrictions should be re-examined and just second restrictions, see mentioned, say for close cumulative innovation that just competition through new products, Monsanto's private systems have no present value for their evidence. The counterplan text says sustainable ag practices that is not the same as food sovereignty. Our affirmative evidence explicitly distinguishes maximizing yield and food security and food sovereignty. The former would homogenize seeds, which makes crop varieties less resilient to less resilient, which is impacted by seed diversity done above. The role of the judges who evaluate the desirability of the plan. The plan is a locus of affirmative offense. Their model justifies criticizing the affirmative from infinite unpredictable angles, which stacks fairness and clash. Case outweighs it costs extinction. Industrial agriculture exceeds every possible planetary boundary, which is done above permutation of both. Food sovereignty is good. Policy relevance is good. One key to food sovereignty: the federal government is the only body with the authority, the ability to break up corporations that control food. The people coalescing around non-policy relevant alternatives to an adventurous authority, and they can enact comprehensive ag reform, renegotiate trade pacts, fund sustainable ag research, build food research, and reform the food system that's static and led to it solves every global crisis, climate change, food security, food sovereignty, financial crashes, fuel, corporate assault on land, labor, and our crises that require the state. It is the only adjunct that can reach all existing resources. 3, the state is not static, it is a contested, complex form, which means that policy relevance is too essentializing. 4, the alto and fails, rejecting the state, refuses to reconfigure power at all. The state is a crucial tool in remedying declining prices. Still see 16, for somebody possesses position of market events and a mobilization of the state, the fraction can enable the state, the next is for equitable system food sovereignty tangents from from the state, underlying market events, cut the guard, market events, econ DA, antitrust expansion now, shift 331, along with the first authorities, besides the 7 competition, was endorsed by justice performance and industry supervised president around factories, success, the rules of change and enforcement of their movements towards modernized interest, will rewrite merger guidelines, lack of CW is administrable, judges are good at balancing conflicting rights, no lengthy affirmative, does not collapse the economy, it dismantles industrial ag, but it's sector specific recession now, again 325, Ukraine inflation rapid rates, economy face governments, leads to supplies of one is rechange of recession risk to retire, the spike in oil and commodity prices change things, organization for the more, our rights 79% of the weeks of a year, the heart of it stops on race, higher the cost is up and desperation of some excuse of which for the illusion thinking absurdity and forecast litigation to pull in a red hot stock market, path for launch and stagnation. If we're going to stagnation, the Fed will boost into recession, turn preserving economic growth is bad, extinction and market events was impacted by neoliberalism is not sustainable. A, industrial ag is a necessary component of neoliberalism and it's reaching planetary limits. B, innovation can't solve. Markets 20 increasing on 1% with rapidly nutrition for the greater to decrease rise it's 18 times with humans like 2100 positive events and results ocean temps CO2 isolate video and penalty carbon energy methane hydrates lead CH4 lead outside the most massive reduction of VH and force changes drive us to buckets with the best environmental legislation through checks sea level rise flooding hundreds of millions exactly worse by water food and disasters to power flooding globalization or the various floods or the white clouds society risk extinction for homo sapiens cut the guard and extinction for homo sapiens no econ impact Yao 19th the cycle is for faces expansion crisis recession recovery massively rise recession market security when countries cannot solve problems they may result in expansion every country in expansion are facing downward pressure the order of average and prosperity people worried about the potential recession or the upturn is after many take place among countries whose economies are beginning to suddenly wars occur during upswing countries in upturn have a better capacity to be more likely to wage large scale wars and choose stronger reliable FTCDA they're resilient past funding gets through they can make do with limited funding there's also zero link DOJ court states and private litigants can enforce which solves normal means it's new funding not a trade-off that was above it won't collapse AI investigations or international outreach their evidence says that it's high priority but other resources would get retasked there's no spillover cross sector it's a different division with different budgeting the FTC is already overstretched Holland 335% increases and it's like particular FTC BJ and it's against spending Google and costing an issue for research agencies they face companies with unlimited resources no AI impact cabinet 19 the international environment is holding conditions responses to a new tech existing platforms unsuitable the international community is slow to nothing are rules to deal with new challenges growing strategic competition between powers in high tech centers unable from the latter levels to regulatory competition and likely to delay action the compact CA not unique their evidence says current antitrust shows resource conservation agreements evidence says we need new exemptions from antitrust we saw the impact best industrial ag accounts for over 60% of noxious emissions zero link to the app and turn their evidence says producers need to collaborate to preserve threat and resources that would be unambiguously allowed under a food sovereignty standard green antitrust is backwards Shingle and Firm 21 for believing incentivized sustainably companies to produce sustainably regardless of reduces competitors who coordinate trade incentive provide mental sustainability for progress authorities will monitor exempt agreements to striking info agencies cannot add type resources no bright line for what counts as environmental benefits Shingle and Firm 21 for long the firm's market power on companies promise to switch to sustainable production and reduce the promise to shift production to low emission plants for the data is standard application of control and enforcement there is discretion to take sustainability into account.
Okay, we're gonna prep for
Yep.
Okay. We took. Oh shit.
We took 40 seconds. Okay, you good?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna ask like 2 questions and then we're gonna take the rest as prep. 1, theoretical reasons to reject the team.
Conditionality is a voting issue. 50 state fiat is a voting issue. And then on the antitrust pick, the core antitrust laws pick is a voting issue.
Okay, and then FTC bad flower, list every argument. They're
Fair enough.
resilient. They're resilient.
resilient because past funding cuts prove they can make do with limited funding.
No link.
Other actors can enforce which solves, like the DOJ, courts, states, private litigants. Normal means is new funding. International outreach won't collapse because your evidence says that it's high priority, which means that other resources would get retasked. There's no spillover across sector, which means that international outreach is a different division from that which the AF would be enforced by. Overstretch, impact defense.
Got you. All right, we're gonna take the rest of the prep. Thank you.
Yep. You all are taking prep, right?
We've got 3 left.
I'm dead. So dead. Another one of these. Is my body gonna? Am I gonna like have a heart attack?
I think you're all right, man. Don't worry about it.
That sucks.
Right. Sending it out now. It's sent. Do you have a stand?
No. I just spoke up a chair
Oh shit, no way.
on 5.
Damn.
I bet you like anyone in the hallway has one. And we've taken so much judge prep at this point that it probably doesn't matter.
Oh, fuck. You know we were unmuted, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Unlike you. Yeah.
Sorry, Kevin, are you
Okay,
really
wait, sorry.
suggesting?
My bad. My volume was off. I think I
No,
said
I was,
this is kind of annoying, but we'll figure it out. It's like, can we actually just get a stand?
Yes. Okay, we're getting a stand.
Okay, well, in the process of getting a stand, I'll T, the pick, case, CSR, econ.
Sorry, T pick the case.
The case, CSR, econ.
Got it.
All right. Cool. We good?
Are you not waiting for a stand?
What's up?
Are you not waiting for a stand?
Okay,
Oh,
we have a
flag.
stand. Wonderful.
Literally perfect timing.
Sorry.
Can you mute while we get this squared away so it's not annoying?
What's up?
I said, can you mute while we get this squared away so it's not annoying?
Squared away.
Kevin,
What is
mute.
Okay. Okay, all right. I'm ready to go. Sorry for taking so long. All right, we all good? Okay.
2 violations. 1, first, anti-competitive business practices are horizontal single for conduct, not any random action that a company takes to develop their agriculture. Reading the definition from the FTC, anything else prevents every single possible business practice that could be construed as undesirable as a topical affirmative. You can take all parts of the CWSF, see what the negatives reading of the regulations can plan, and then declare all those actions as anti-competitive breach practices to configure underway when you see. Second, core antitrust laws require expanded definition of conduct cost Clayton Sherman in the FTC Act. It cannot be a regulation of sector-specific business practices, but negative for legal limits. Affirmative prevents any dissolution of any conglomeration of conduct as an antitrust violation, which dodges the court of topic imports basically every every finance policy to debate every as a question of whether we should regulate or not regulate on top of how we should interpret existing antitrust statutes, and as an exposure to the topic to setting any possible artificial sector-specific boundary on any side of the company, which is in a business practice. Teams can we the CW staff up here exercise to every industry, i.e. pharma, real estate, healthcare, or finance, and add arbitrary caps on size to spike out of economy says, which makes debate functionally possible as a framing dice. You think about this particular app. They're effectively reading what they've effectively done is read plan, implement USC's food sovereignty all with the words antitrust in the plan text. Choice one, they see the plan is economy wide, even if the plan applies to the economy. The practice that they're banning is not, which is the distinction our evidence makes. Not every single company in the economy can do the action of food sovereignty, and those plan standard simply does not make sense. Our evidence indicates that that is the kind of that is a regulation on a specific sector when an expansion of core antitrust laws, much less anti-competitive business conduct. Also, if this is the case, the plan is extra topical because on top of limiting mergers of horizontal activity, they have a host of other things that could be declared as a potential regulation that would harm food sovereignty as well. So they just do anything with antitrust laws, that expansion or expanding things beyond just anti-competitive conduct as well, which is established in the 1AC evidence. Also, they're within the bounds of Clayton and FTC. They do not expand these laws. Guidelines can only set standards consistent with laws. They're missing a definition that says the plan would change the definitions that are inconsistent with inconsistent with status quo antitrust laws. FTC 6 federal antitrust law came interpreting FTC. Of course, they're interpreting these statutes part of the mandate antitrust case law because of the existing law that using anti-competitive outcomes likely zero force of law. Enforcement decisions alone are not laws. Bill 21, FTC antitrust laundering, merger guidelines and review law demands government care to enforce law enforcement under the CWS. The court expands actually, I'm not going to read this. The executive enforces antitrust laws. This is not an expansion. FTC no date. FTC enforces antitrust laws. The cards they read in the 2AC are cards for us. They all say that for fuck's sake, they read the cunts card, which is the interpret in the 1 and C, and says the plan was expand all of the 3 core antitrust laws, not one law. So the plan simply doesn't fall in the boundaries of this conduct. They also have no counter definition of the fact that they can't just ban any practice. Also, the Quizner card goes negative because it's an interform competition, not the practices by each individual firm is what creates the basis for anti-competitive conduct. So they have an extra violation. It's bad because it makes the app just be able to put any kind of business practice in the 1 and C and claim an advantage off that, which is unpredictable negative, which straight turns there's a business predictability arguments and haven't impacted any of these as it relates to education. We're the only ones with the predictable interpretation topics. We're reading the legal definitions from the 1AC reasonability. It's arbitrary and don't eventually should prefer competing interpretation. That's the only non-arbitrary basis to render a decision about what the topic means. Some of all competing interpretation, some of all reasonable interpretations too far of a topic and devolves into extra justification, which was impacted earlier. The counter plan at the top, new plank. The United States federal government should prohibit business practices that undermine food sovereignty in the food sector. We establish sector-specific regulations as a competition argument on the topicality page, so that doesn't matter. The counter plan overwhelmingly solves the app. We are the only ones reading evidence about the scope of current antitrust laws. There's no need to expand them in status quo. Our evidence indicates that the packers and stalkers are sufficient to leverage the entirety of the UG's and FTC's antitrust regulations, which doesn't require us to reinterpret the law radically and change the scope of the status quo. The 1AC solves the advocate agrees about whether the antitrust division is currently able to enforce the current antitrust statutes. This is the 1AC cost evidence. I inserted the green. It literally says that FTC's lax interpretations of antitrust statutes are the reason why it's not expanded in the status quo. We don't have to rewrite those statutes, which is the combination argument that was established on TDC. They do the app, perm do the counter plan, perm do both. The links to the econ DA because the plan involves the expansion of these and a reinterpretation of the CWS, which is the brightly established in 1AC cross-sticks when they committed to this as the definition of the plan. They see they do it as an amendment to antitrust. This is that we just try this on topicality. The counter plan is plain menace because it's not interpreting antitrust laws. They see it's agent. We're not an agent DA. The counter plan does not protect competition, which is why we have a net benefit, which is answer to the next 2AC argument. They see the counter plan must be compete off seconds and function. Functional competition is an infinite regress. You would put an affirmative on perm to the counter plan if we said we should not do the plan, which is nonsense, and you should be leaning on theory against a new affirmative because because we weren't prepared for it. We're just throwing shit at the wall at this point. They see links to the FTC. This is not the case. The sector-specific regulation plan that we described earlier also doesn't involve antitrust expansion, which is a link to that DA. The BizCon DA, we're going to extend that DA and we're going to impact from their impact terms, so it doesn't matter. They see they concentrate. The last set of arguments make literally no sense. They have no evidence indicating that the expansion of antitrust law would change the concentration of other fields, other fields, or that other fields of the law are necessary for the actualization of absolvency. Their evidence indicates that big meat is the biggest contributor to industrial agriculture, so we could deconcentrate that industry specifically without changing the entire scope of the antitrust law. They say rule of reason is key to solve resolving. The counter plan is also rule of reason. The card is about activists. The activists case about biosimilars, not agriculture, so there's no impact to this argument. As well, crop fire is uncarded. No reason why that works. Also, regs work. Women's 16 environmental regulations. One of the environmental 16 in 20 years. Factory costs of these percentage increasing the earning about 30%. Business work capital pollution, child produce more outputs, CO2, change within a regulated air pollution flexibility systems about the e-commerce certainly tech improvement importance. Those concerned the cleaner profits the case. They cannot access extinction. They only access agriculture in the United States. You have no evidence indicating spills over, and this is not the relevant time scale for impact. They conceded the time frame on general link on our biodata defense, which says that it would take like 50 to 100 years to solve. It will also drop down to the durable fiat theory, where regulatory capture inverts the after, or CFS indicates that broad social political rules like food sovereignty are impossible to quantify, which is identifying one crossing when they're unable to establish a standard the court could ever adopt to implement the affirmative. You can only durable fiat the standard the administration uses, so they can't get it out by enforcing the CSRDA. This is clearly established by the arguments they made here that claims like sustainability, environmental protection can never be defined, and therefore it's impossible to create a legal basis off of which applies just by the affirmative, because they just use vacuous terms like food sovereignty. The econ DA at the top, economic innovation halts nuclear war, hostile business environment, halts critical technology that racks up challenges to ally via revisions actors, escalates instability, which manifests arm race and geopolitical fights. That's Chapardas, finishing the Dorsey card, social political goals, the my competition, undermining social liberalization or national industrial policy, the effort alternative to increase the more competition. I can see how this debate's going to end. They're just rapidly and blindly, to be honest, impact turning our disadvantage. This does not respond to our specific internal that we read in the 1NCR. The internal was to 3D printing and artificial intelligence innovations, 4D and 5G innovations, not necessarily the broad growth of the entire economy, which is basically what all their impact turns stem from. You'd have to win that we massively increase industrial agriculture as the plan will create an intermediate decline in economic growth in the near term, which they simply don't have any defense to. The thumpers, one, USFG should make the scope, should maintain the scope of core internal loss. 2, FTC loses now. I can take in 20. Expect fully putting internal the FTC finally most likely the business model changes to harbors including Twitter. Lawsuits have no impact on future users. The non-unique argument. Economy is strong now. 1, no recession countdown. We're in the middle of the business cycle. GDP goes up and investment activity is the best during pre-COVID. That's Schneider. 2, unemployment, labor productivity. Boxes 3, 2017. Economic performance better than most of these people say. Unemployment rate is already back to the liberal imports. Started to pick up. Started actually. 3, lawyer probability. 3, it's not the relevant time frame for participating in the next 5 to 10 years. They see no link. The total basically devolves into total welfare standard, which crushes economic activity, which also matters to litigation, and trying to assess what a food sovereignty theory is. That's a Pandora's box for every rationalization for social costs, which depresses investment activity. That's the standard of evidence that we describe in the 1NC. It's also a multi-goal framework that guts enforcement. Gale 19, Brodsky knows a multi-goal framework, better confusion court, Brazilian efficient force and properties, articulate benefits, and employees problems, rate. The regulation brought non-prospective quality innovation and monopoly concerns. The industrial agriculture debate. The plan simply cannot solve global industrial agriculture, which is a threshold established by their evidence to cause extinction. So there's no way that this is an advantage given the DA that we read in the context of this debate. Also, industrial consolidation is good. Northhouse 21. So also really close to half the farms, less than percentage, largest part of the 50%. Even farms over 30 people. There's not a conspiracy without corporations. Food system and industrial like consumption habits are inevitable. Northwestern 21. Land use to 5% of food sales, organic organic sales, constant high value sales, product mix, good environmental sensing, again, the large scale shifting, organic farming, workforce, resulting greater habitat loss, greenhouse gas emissions, bigger, natural pollution, meaning high insufficient way to reduce crops, globally traded ag is the best thing, opposing land, 100 grain, but produce more lands somewhere else. The growth is good, and no transition chambers 11. Industrial ag, there's too many business, industrial farming is good, break back and live for the added transformation, reduce ag yield, reducing possibility of food security, hunger, ecosystem, rose over reality, human molecules to be about the rest of the world. Shoot the tag is like rather go to destroying the environment. The most social isolate imagine campus, degrowth programs working, workers consume lots of more strategy problems that Econ Impact 1, our internal link to this was innovation and the context of competition against China, not necessarily the global economic situation of the world. Second, current geopolitical crisis is the exception, not the norm. Their card just as a meta iteration of history, which isn't assigned to our specific standard in the 1 and C3. The economic security architecture, called the keys 17 is demand for U.S. dollars, U.S. security, the global reserve, the U.S. economic crisis. Actually, not going to read this card. Actually, Julian, you might have to read these cards. Sorry.
That's fine.
Just these two cards. Yeah.
Just for a minute.
Okay. Are y'all ready for CX?
So I think there were, after you read FTC loses now, it seems like there was like a Fox card or there was something before you got to the link that it didn't seem like was in the doc.
Oh, wait. I think I might have inserted these before I saved. Okay, let me just compile all the doc cards that I think might have not have been in the doc and
Thank you.
see if these solve the problem. Sorry about that. Okay, I think these are the cards you're referring to. Sorry about that. Was that a?
No,
that's all-
I'm just downloading the doc and it's opening.
Yeah, you're good. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's these. Okay, thank you.
Cool beans. Any cool beans.
Okay, but now we're gonna take prep. So we had 553. We have 519.
Okay. You good?
Yep.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. T, the first interpretation you extended was of anti-competitive business practices. It includes single firm and horizontal firm conduct. What practices are excluded by this interpretation? Like what would not constitute one of these two types of practices?
Anything that's not monopolization, price fixing, boycotts, things that involve inter-firm conduct.
Yeah. So give me an example. Like what practice does the affirmative prohibit that is
Saying
excluded
that
by this interpretation?
saying that a current business does, like burns the forest to, keep their food system alive. Ergo, antitrust. Like that would be, it's part of the scope of the AF that you
How is that an
established.
exercise of market power that the AF would prohibit? Why is that an anti?
Number one, I don't think you have a card that says that the plan would be constrained to market power. It doesn't even say anti-competitive business.
I mean,
practices. It says business practices.
Yeah,
Clearly, burning the
requires
forest to
business
keep the food.
practices.
What's up?
Okay. No, but okay. So let me ask a follow-up question to that. Why is that not single firm conduct?
It's not a monopolization of the industry. It's not
not
like
monopolization of the
single
industry.
firm
Your
takes
one and C-
control of the industry.
Your 1 and C card says that single firm conduct is something that is just okay. Wait. Okay. The second
Monopolize trade or to acquire a dominant position by preventing new entry.
I think I got enough. The second interpretation about antitrust laws, it's the three core ones, and it excludes sector-specific regulations. What exactly forecloses expansion of an antitrust law to apply to a particular sector?
Sorry, I don't understand the question.
What evidence have you read that excludes sector-specific regulation from antitrust?
Yeah, our card distinguishes sector-specific regulations and the expansion of core antitrust laws. Antitrust laws are general. They refer to the entity of a business and that generic entity doing a set of practices. It's not like this particular business in this sector should adopt these business practices. So if your business practice that you're banning doesn't really make sense for another industry, then it's not a business practice.
I think you were answering
like a food company's practices. That's not a business practice. It's not a generic business practice that can be defined.
The problem that I have is that like your Shalansky card is about the telecom case, saying that regulation is something particular to the jurisdiction of the FCC. I'm kind of confused, like how any of your evidence is exclusive of antitrust laws that are targeted at particular sectors. Like what makes the AF a regulation?
Well, the AF only makes sense within the context of a certain industry. Like you're banning actions by food companies.
And that makes it a regulation. Why?
Because it's sector specific.
So it's
antitrust is defining
I think that's
anti-competitive
circular.
business activity. Like anti-competitive business activity must be agnostic to the industry because it refers to the entity of a business in the US, not like, yeah. Are y'all taking prep or?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
we are gonna take prep. Okay.
I'm setting up the stand. The stand was not going to cooperate, so for the sake of everybody, I'm just going to get started. And by get started, I mean send it so that we can get started. Okay, set. Let me know when everybody's good for an order with some sort of visual. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and, oh, no order, got you. Awesome, okay, everybody good for an order? Awesome. Econ DA, is that where this is? Econ DA? States? The K? Wherever condo is, I'm not sure upon which sheet conditionality was argued. And then FTC. Anyone need it again?
Yeah, could you say that again?
Can you repeat that, Turner? I was, yeah.
Yes, I would like to order.
Awesome. Okay. Econ DA, states, the K, condo, wherever condo is, and then FTC. Let me actually turn it up and record a local just in case our shit goes. Okay. Are we all good? Everybody's got a document and order. Awesome. Northwestern, some sort of visual hand wave. Okay. Let me get my doc set up and then we're all good. Okay. Oh, wait, shit. I guess if I'm recording a local on this, we need like a different timer.
I can.
Oh, okay. All right. Kevin's going to record it on his phone and then I'm just going to.
Let's get started.
Okay. Gonna start in like 3 seconds. Sorry about all this tech time, you know. Gonna go. Sustainable 2020 biological means can be used to reduce the economy's physical materials with reduced sustainability, potentially to reduce emissions of biology is increasingly being used to create novel materials and that generates less carbon emissions. Advances in biological science have made already more precise and place microbiome increasingly being used to optimize yield. Gene therapies offer cures to some diseases, carbs, and engineered methodologies using biological data enhancing discovery. Scope scale can have broad impacts on economic application change. Everything from the food sales to 60% of physical emissions in the global economy can reduce biologically modest progress can be transformative innovation kit, treatment of disease and Rebuttals and 21. The anti-capitalism is not supporting capitalism is not the cause of problems, but the best solutions that can be implemented properly does not meet the future turn against historical increases in health that could not have happened under any old capitalism is driver life expectancy, lowered mortality, calories, minimize disease, lower poverty, happiness, reduce war, higher rights, reduce racist opinions and literacy, quantifiable consequences that way, reduce regulated capital essential for remove deficits, life less cap, poverty will be worse, there will be more overpopulation, food security, population pollution and environmental stresses, capacity, part of dealing with competition, measurable indicators, cap promotes peace, and anti-capitalism would be a disaster. Antitrust expansion sees leadership in the 5G race. Rebuttal 21, 5G is critical. The U.S. has a technological edge over rivals in the RD for 5G and next gen. Tech leadership ensure security and of hard and software that make up the mechanisms, systems, and security. U.S. companies in innovation, patenting, and the standard center not alone Chinese companies invested heavily 5G is a race. Well, U.S. companies are talented across the contenders to enter their ability to lead tech centers for 5G aggressive enforcement benefit for competitors. Antitrust undermine IP predatory enforcement weaken the ability to compete by exacting high penalties, antitrust power China and other serious major influence over the evolving 5G sees the 5G standard. Term patents in the semiconductor industry marked the semiconductor industry extinction chain in 20 AI 3D printing engineering the energy the IoT 5G space and cyber promise benefits would also carry serious downside risks. Even human addition to 3D printing can be used by rogue states. Spring arms races and prolife genetic engineering can wipe out because the people directed energy may undermine the global stability where risks autocracies may win the next tech arms race in AI, hypersonic missiles, and others before the Democratic war. This could lead to a rapid shift in upsetting strategic stability in the rules-based system. The U.S. and its Democratic allies need to harness tech in a way that maximizes upside while mitigating downside risks. The states counterplan permutations and test competition. Fiat 50 say fiat reject the argument, not the team. The K hurts, but perm is a test of competition. Condo, to borrow a quote from my good friend, fuck off. We get what we did, and it's what you want. It's a new F, which is backstop against all their offense. Anything else, Bruce, they kill. Neg flex that aways. F changed into 2AC, which requires multiple options. They encourage sandbagging, which makes the debate impossible for the neg, but easy for the F, since the neg is the only one left into their first speech. Arbitrariness, unpredictable rules worse than none. They benefit the F. Counter interpretation is arbitrary. Links or stuff, FTC trade-off, DA, one DA or DA waste, one upside risk, climate disaster response, geopolitics, IR, and IR resource coordination, all existential threats in 21st century, embedded in justice and health, environment networks decrease the likelihood of conflict, no 2AC second line, 2 downside risk, creating a super intelligence that treats humans as accessible cost, kills us all. That's one piece of evidence. Also, uniqueness counterplan. The United States Federal Register to allocate sufficient resources to the FCC for AI regulations. They say resilient one, not resilient. That's possible. Agencies have limited resources, so the F is sufficient to determine the future of AI enforcement. 2 doesn't assume our internal link. AI is an emerging technology, so it requires extensive cross-government collaboration that requires full focus. They say other actors can enforce. 1 FTC key. We are the only team with a piece of evidence on this question, so it must be nagged. They are vital for consultations that span governments and other agencies are focused on other issues in hearing. FTC makes it effective. DOJ press and 21. Antitrust work closely with international colleagues who are multilateral society and the FTC made substantial contribution to ICM, provide tips for agency FTC examine competition policy, including the digital economy. Over 2,500 delegates participated. They say normal means 1, not in the plan. We should get the link argument for grant. Anything else runs predictability. 2, framed by their F quality clearly, not about the the plan trades off, which is the 1 and 2 piece of evidence because it fractures the necessary because it fractures agency because it fractures resource international resource distribution, which is the 1 and 2 piece of evidence on the which is the
want to see piece of evidence. They say international outreach won't collapse. One, trust is fragile. The link should determine the question of whether outreach collapses because our link argument has sufficient scale to determine international outreach. Two, priority is irrelevant. It's a question of resources, so they don't have defense or internal link. Three, there is no ev for this. They say no spillover. One, no ev for this either. They have not explained or read ev for why it's done by a different division. If that is the case, it's probably T food, so you should leave some tune or leeway for Kevin. Two, yes, spillover. Bergen 21. The budget coincides with stagnation and employees retaining is another struggle for the agency, forced to compete with the private sector FCC. Attorneys and professionals while finding 7. Climate the FCC's ability has increased because of the funding and hiring without resources to handle the increase in filing. The FCC has been compelled to reduce the number of enforcement and conservative staff for researchers for only the most important cases as a result of the climate by nearly half. Let's see. They say already overstretched largely as above. Also, no control what's in 20 organizations are getting enough funding agencies or resource constraint. The FTC have a budget below what Facebook makes in 3 days, less than 350 million per year. That would just already lose your balance by agencies and if I say to the extent that they like they much higher away from cases for a draining battle. This doesn't mean entities that are entirely hamstrung. They can marshal a very clear case they want to win if it's really good attorneys put a case together and go after. But when you only take up a little bit of cases, your resource constraint things inevitably slip through. Then they say no AI impact. One, this is not impact defense. This is internal link defense. So they are fucked. All we have to do is win the FTC is sufficient to ensure the efficacy of international AI regulations. If we have an unmitigated impact, 2, or want to see evidence substantiates that encourage regulatory harmonization between countries. And Braille et al. In 19 co-op. And AI is a very important but a difficult on AI. There's a lot of goodwill. Its sector is essential and possible from the sense that we have a convergence and problems facing us. Therefore, there is motivation to cooperate. The challenge would be versus from antitrust. We disagree on substantive issues. We have convergence on procedural issues because procedural issues in AI are so important. We have tech to process. If we have black boxes, what are the procedures on that uses the tech or global? Market global.
What did we? I don't remember what we had. 332. Oh, I didn't unmute, but I put this in the chat. Sorry, I have so many docs open right now. My computer's being very slow. I'm gonna have to close out of some of them. Is everyone here? No, Mikaela's not here. Okay, I sent it back. Sorry, I'm just like lining up. Okay. Case T the complex DA, the econ DA, the FTC DA.
Case
Obviously, the counterclaim wasn't in there, so let me start over. Case T, the complex DA, the counterclaim, the econ DA, the FTC DA. And give me just a second to line up like the cells on each of these. Case always all of the DA's industrial agriculture is burning the planet. It's annihilating biodiversity, exacerbating climate change, and homogenizing across the livestock varieties, which makes our food system more vulnerable to shock. It culminates in extinction and crosses every planetary boundary, keeping us alive. The 2 and C does not extend defense here that you could allow them to rage about in the 2 and R. Just say can't access extinction long time frame false industrial agriculture. Is burning the planet now at crop prices, the majority of emissions and getting rid of it. Solve quickly, yet no durable fiat argument. Just say make any sense. Food sovereignty is not impossible to quantify and can't implement the app because this is changing the standard that they use for analysis. The block is playing too fast and too loose with too many arguments, but not getting it done, and any of them no new 2-hour explanations or arguments, and the shooter gets to say whatever it wants. Topicality dropped, plain text in a vacuum. It makes a lot of sense here because we use all the words of the resolution and defended, expanding the scope of the core antitrust laws and increasing prohibitions is the most objective way to elevate topicality debates. And the Jones State says nothing on it. One framing issue answers both of their violations. They are all about what anti-competitive conduct is now, not what the app can make it be. The app has to expand the scope by saying the new conduct is anti-competitive, which answers all of their limits claims because they would always get links. It's the same deal for core. The topic says expand the scope of the core. The core covers many things out of the app shop is have something that's an arbitrary and that's an benefit to our interpretations of all these words because they make a topicality moving target for the app. When the app targets any specific conduct, it would just be, or when the app, if the app targets any specific conduct, they would just say that that's not something that is anti-competitive now, so therefore it's not under the scope of the core laws. They make it impossible to debates about different sectors, which is necessary on this topic because core expanding the scope of antitrust to cover the whole economy is not a proposal defended in the literature. No action targets all prohibition. Expanding the scope of core law, apps and guidelines. FTC card makes no sense. It is an enforcement decision. It changes the CWS, which is an expansion of the scope. So none of the extra cards they're reading matter. They say that we read cons, but cons just says that the core laws are what they are now, but they have no evidence about what expanding the scope of those core laws mean reasonability. This is a completely arbitrarily extracted interpretation that's meant to be horrible for the app. The complex. Yeah, not sure what argument Kevin is trying to make here about the case. News incoherent on the lack of gets you answers. And then 2AR, the antitrust pay counterclaim, the top level, they have no evidence for the counterclaim. 1 and C. Kellaway says both the Biden should pass stronger rules under the PSA and he should direct antitrust enforcement to break up mergers. They have no explanation of how this could happen or that it could happen under current law. If it's just an antitrust law, then it links to all of the DAs and there's no differential explained. Now dropped a theory argument that counterclaims that can be off of core antitrust laws or a voting issue. It's a good vision of debate where they say process-based protection for markets are bad and regulations better, but this is not that. It just takes out of the legislative label of antitrust, allowing the net to capture any future antitrust like consideration of competition, trouble damages, judicial proceedings, and replicating another regime, siphoning any substantive antitrust work from the app. No new answers now. Extend perm to the app, and the counterclaims agent enforces it. Block also drops this. It's not severance or intrinsic because they have no card saying the FTC would have to enforce an expansion of the scope of those laws, which solves the entirety of the link to the FTCDA. They also dropped do the app and codify it as antitrust law, which solves all of their competition arguments and the link to the econ DA for the same reason the counterclaim would, because their argument is that the counterclaim creates a new clear legal regime that's not feared by businesses, but the perm would take this new regime and insert into Sherman Clayton or the FTCA, which is not severance or intrinsic codification. This refined with about placement and code that makes it core antitrust law. Western 9 U.S. Code antitrust laws includes section 1 act codifying new sections 13A, B, C, to naturally definition core antitrust laws permutation to both not have extra offense. The counterclaim definitely links to the business confidence DA because it just puts it in another law, but it would still over just the same because they said the PSA is a counter antitrust law on the 1 and C. Now it doesn't solve the case. Expanding the scope of antitrust is key. Recent court decisions immunize any competitive licensing practices on the seed industry. College 21 pending consolidation market shift and ag. Qualcomm ruling unification for antitrust and see the courts with no licensure policy not violate antitrust, but Maple and Lee Nice given green light for similar Practices next economy structuration legal and licensing broad leeway to bundle market bundle if they do rule of recency that's no different from the after econ DA no impact recession does make more likely conflict concern any point of the cycle doesn't cause war while 21 of our relationship between economic conditions word diversity theory and strikes these unlikely words always again local days go differently little would have less and local companies essential nation will prepare perspective word logic like the other world self military getting them no debt is hard to imagine a country less word developer story each way to stimulate the economy workers stimulate the economy there's no 5G impact but 19 West 5G business states are holding quick from the top guys likely which right comes building enough before never seeing weakness as with rising DTD fed for themselves like companies move already slow numbers race and imaginary bullshit caused by US telecom LT never slow what did Winnie accomplish interest now enters a whole DA one card from 2020 it's insufficient companies perceive increased risk now fall 200 persons for financial sanctions by person conversation change the company congressional tester can you see viewer regardless if he's any pressure expected over changes to consider no issues such as labor competition approaches race real companies these more first risk businesses are furious AC 111 Washington is actually not going to read that instead I'm going to read the GOP will win the midterms and we'll do antitrust Brenton 3 check over habit of reps take the House sector career for outlaw investigation president legislation animosity towards sex is finding rep conference for like not where reps change better around to check there's no link they only write no spillover argument or others only about ag exemptions or sector specific content Kessler 11 paper run no uncertainty cost of plan activity diversity projection real projection include uncertainty not cost vacancy regulation sector specific if they have been perceived CWS link is not more efficient or economic pair more 20 CPS deceptive ideas of value efficiency consumer quotas distribution good willing to pay to pass that habitat wonder of efficiency market not a measure of efficiency industrial ag good arguments are answered it's unsustainable their evidence is by hack they're responsible for 70% of GHGs the one you see evidence is fantastic their evidence in 2017 and I'm not reading another card here because it's not enough to go for separately in the 2 and the FTCA do permutation do both for the uniqueness counterplan it solves because we would allocate sufficient resources conceded the global governance doesn't solve so there can't be an impact to emerging tech because it's possible for the FTC to coordinate internationally increase funding well pass with the FTC's overstretched now flip 320 and trust HG's couple with cash mergers while waging battles against the healthiest choice both asking for money for years FTC's been short of cash layers discussion can staff award against more cases there's no link other enforcers backs the impact terms of confidential 20 interest favors to decentralization power to prosecute community agencies publications federal state level receiver business competition pass enforce laws to price state cars and IT signal force the issues disabled due to a resource austerity or they would get new funding that's normal means that's best for debate otherwise any that did anything would always lose because the FTC doesn't have enough resources Congress will give them more verse 21 but proposed statute give 11% increase funding to FTC as well as have to be Justice Department interest division there's no trade-off it's a different division while our 5 FTC organization which has to emphasize separation of competition consumer protection for CPCP activity very different from the competition slow nearby BU where the staff specialized out across the workers not in case selection or investigation they also conceded that if AI reaches a high enough priority then the FTC would never get rid of it they would put something else on the chopping block go back to that other DA and CBS deviations now paragraph 3 CCC FTC authors complaint based on labor the complaint of labor comes labor stress workers several emergency submitted competition for labor that card is marked at labor I marked a lot so I'm happy to fix that but it'll take me a second because I marked them all in a read doc not in like a doc that I can send out
Yeah, if you could do that. Also, like I don't know if the card was in the stock. So like there was a card between no 5G and GOP will do antitrust. Like is that card in the stock?
it should be under the antitrust now header
Okay, so it's this first. Okay, full cop. Okay, cool.
so hold on so can you do it like if you pull up a read like a doc that has the full text of the cards yeah
Yeah, we know.
so call it COLLETT at bundle or just search bundle okay. See on the search competition for labor the search competition for labor. Oh, because it's not, sorry, it's not a continuous sentence. So search.
Here.
And then in Camel and Glyph, measure of efficiency. That's on links.
Efficiency, measure of efficiency.
Yep. Anything on that to see you.
I don't think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's it. So you can send that. Okay, that's fine.
The cards that were cut at particular places, I said cut here in all caps. So if you like Control F for that, you should find the cards were marked.
Okay, I got it. We can start prep now. Thanks. Which of these industrial ag good cards did you read?
Sorry.
Which industrial ag good 2AC under this header, which cards did you read?
No, I just referenced the 1AC cards.
Cool. That's 3. All right. Could you handle that? Okay. We good. So order is T, FTCDA, the case, the pick, the econ DA.
Okay, you good? All right. Expanding core antitrust laws requires an interpreting definition of anti-competitive conduct, such as applies to all businesses, not just a particular industry practice. There's no 2AR to the plan takes in a vacuum because they explicitly decide to exclude the word anti-competitive from the plan to get out of critiquing. So you assume the logical result of the plan takes we ban anti-competitive business that engage in a practice that can be construed as infringing on food sovereignty, which is a fucking nonsensical standard established in 1AC crossing. The counter plan picks out of applying the standard to completely irrelevant industries like 5G internet companies, which you read evidence that says that this wanton application will vaporize any possibility for military innovation, which we said stops future accidental prices in a competition against China. The impact is predictable, limits sector-specific affirmatives, explore the topics, include every possible permutation of industries. As an individual plan, you could be prepared to debate every single version of CWS to every possible sector of the economy, i.e. adopting a worker welfare standard for pharma, worker welfare standard for real estate, a worker welfare standard for banks. It's an infinite expansion of Afghan that forces the negative to debate a separate economy for every possible area of the economy rather than debate a broader and legal infrastructure of the private sector. Plans into the vacuum was addressed orderly. They see expand the scope and the status quo. Things are not declared independently. What they're missing is that we're not defining the word expand. We're defining the object of what is being expanded. The app expands something, but it's certainly not an antitrust law first. The context that they don't expand it to all sectors. The plan only really makes sense in the context of the farming industry because they define business practices, exclusive things that define food sovereignty, which means they concede, which means it's extra topical because they define a host of other things that don't really generalize to other businesses like 5G or internet companies, which is bad because the negative would have to. The negative, the consumer reasons why those business practices also be banned. You can just blame independent advantages, which is the extra cheap bad argument they extended in the 2NC. There's no ground good argument that's specifically about why we need to include those sectors in particular, and there's no reason why sector-specific regulations are good. So there's no reason why you should vote on a massive limit, massive predictable limits. They see the reasonability. They drop this. They drop the set of cards that just enforcing the law is not an expansion because it doesn't reinterpret Clayton Sherman with the FTC. So it's a complete unreasonable interpretation. They also concede that some follow reasonable interpretations is far too big of a topic. So you should reject the FTC. Will concede no spillover takes out any offense. The case page, the critical frame question they're trying to read a critique while bounded by the scope of the plan. They have no reason why the plan will cause an global adoption of indigenous agricultural practices, much less prevent China or Russia or every developing country from continuing their massive emission policy. There's no sufficient response to the regulatory capture argument. There's no way to quantify or qualify some farmers' demand for food sovereignty, so it just leads to a random test case that throws the court into legal anarchy. There's also a huge delay factor trying to implement a multi-goal framework across all industries. Takes a decade to win a legal challenge, and it drops results in an infinite loop of people trying to show by claiming random defenses under a selective interpretation of the app's rule. That's all the Dorsey and Gale limits. It takes out any risk that food security turns on this disadvantage. Also, I'm pretty fucking sure they drop industrial agriculture good. One, it's key to feed the world because we don't have the industrial sector in order to massive about to food insecurity, which is impacted by the boodle, and indicates that the declining growth will result in a massive starvation, which increases global instability and causes war. Second, they can see the consumption inevitable because we just export our food and industrial apparatus to other countries in the developing world, so the massive increases emissions there, so they don't solve their solar erosion impact. Three, they drop the innovations key to solve biotechnical innovations, which reduces the total cost of soil quality, which solve the channel on back to the biodiversity stuff. The pick, we're the only ones reading any evidence on the current scope of antitrust laws. Our evidence indicates that Pack and Stocky are sufficient to solve the app. In addition to the fact that the antitrust division, the FTC and the UG have sufficient legal reign to make these cases. If the act does not expand that, then they demonstrate all their offense in the case because they just create a vacuous new legal standard that simply cannot solve the advantage. They see competing off of antitrust bad. This is fucking nonsense. We in fact turns on topicality because it creates a race to affirmatives that just basically regulate random industries, put random regulations, and claim advantage counterplans as a plans. And it also conceded that I also concede the only reason why debating these affirmatives is good is because there's negative engagement. There's also no threshold. What do you mean by competing off antitrust? We compete off business practices too because we're at a BizCon DA, so this judicial proceeding stuff doesn't matter. They see codifying antitrust based on new legal stuff. They have no evidence indicating the FTC Act does not apply to mergers and status quo, so that it solves. They also concede that the plan does not expand the scope, so the counterplan doesn't. Also, it doesn't expand the scope as well. So because it forces existing law, so it can piece off that thing too. They say they immunize patent laws. The counterplan also blends those things but doesn't in a sector-specific regulation saying that the food industry in particular has a set of business practices that aren't quote unquote anti-competitive because that would be defining anti-competitive practices across the entire sector, but narrowly pacing regulations on antitrust law in the context of that industry. They only have to win a minimal risk of this because they basically just have defense to this disadvantage. So any reason the counterplan solve the case is sufficient to solve. They've also conceded that the reduced innovation results in geopolitical conflict with the LIO, China, Russia, see a parity advantage military technology, which causes conflict escalation in the SCS, Libya, Syria, and China. This is a conceded defense in the context of rising geopolitical actors who cannot have absolutely impact on a dissent without paying attention on internal link. One and see was about a short-term decline in investment activity and competitive advantage competing against China. It's not plan leads to total economic collapse, but rather 3D printing, ICSR, and added manufacturing being necessary to fighting against China. they only read defense of the 5G components. So it doesn't answer that part of the DA. Second, they conceded that Chinese advantages are inevitable in the status quo. So it's a current geopolitical issue. China has massively increased semiconductor research and a series of other investments that place them in combination, which means that the current geopolitical situation is the exception, not the rule. They say the GOP will cause antitrust. The counterplan fiat's enforcement of the status quo. That was the unique counterplan read in the block. The only chance they have in this debate is fucking no link. This is nonsense because we clearly described in 1AC Cross-6 and the series of Galen Dorsey evidences that we read in the debate that the plan's scope is effectively limitless. This is the only way that we prevent arbitrary advances in legal challenge against the status quo business apparatuses because it maintains the target application on price as the only thing that is relevant. The plan results in a host of other social factors. What constitutes food sovereignty? What would be the legal challenge that would be justified in that? Unless you can answer these questions after the 2A or not, what would be included in the app will be excluded. Then you should be certain that the plan would apply to every single industry and hold investment activity and innovation, because we'd say like semiconductor research in some sector would hurt food sovereignty in some indigenous countries, which hurts, which basically takes out the entire case. The DDF stuff that doesn't really matter that much. I don't really know if they were impacting this or not, but they conceded industrial agriculture was good on aggregate, and they conceded the counterplan, the D said internal link turns it because it generates innovation that solve excess food shortages. So the status quo solves the entire app. There's only risk of dissent. The counterplan solves the ice, and we're the only ones reading evidence about agriculture.
Look, like you can't read this app and just import the 2ACs to other policy teams. Cheech.
Cool. Yeah. This I can't read.
We have 201.
201.
The order is case, T, the pick, then the econ unit. Okay. Is anyone not good? Even if you're unsure about everything else in the debate, whether the economy impact outweighs the industrial ag business or whether industrial ag impacts interacts weirdly with the app, they have brought the seed diversity impact throughout the entirety of the debate. It is the difference between life on Earth flourishing or disappearing. It's a crucial check on the worst excesses of environmental crises. Climate change and ocean acidification would devastate ecosystems of diverse plant and crop varieties were not present to ensure that ecosystems stay strong and thrive. But homogeneous seeds sold by Bayer Monsanto that are adapted to local conditions can be wiped out in a moment. So it devastates the food supply, which risks human survival and ensures a litany of excess threats, which are conceded piece of wanting to see Mulvaney evidence that has not been contested throughout the entirety of the debate. That means that a risk of affirmative, that means a risk that the counterpoint does not solve the F is sufficient for you to vote out. That outweighs the disadvantage. The only scenario for nuclear war is a poisoned food supply, but we saw that directly by making a seed more resilient, which means the food supply does not immediately collapse as a result of nuclear war. That prevents their disadvantage from accessing total extinction, but we do. This is also especially true, and the affirmative outweighs the disadvantage, given we are the only scientifically proven scenario for extinction. Our 1AC evidence is explicit inside scientific studies, whereas theirs are just sociological rambling, which means you should discount it. They say that we don't solve global adoption of stuff, we solve domestically in the United States, which is sufficient to ensure that we have enough resources and food to export to other countries in the midst of a nuclear catastrophe, climate change, ocean acidification, etc., which proves it is a final backstop against the worst access to their impact. We do spill over because U.S. antitrust laws can apply extraterritorially, which is one of our argument. They say that it takes decades to win a challenge. No, it does not. They have read no evidence about this. They've only read a card saying that that our regulatory capture hinders a certainty, which I don't think was extended in the 2R. They have fiat guarantees that it would take that it would be immediate. The FTC would enforce, which the FTC would enforce because of normal means, which was conceded on the FTCDA. They say that industrial agriculture is good. It is not. Their evidence from 2017. The time spent in the 2R is most certainly not enough to go for it. One, industrial agriculture does cause extinction. This is an argument extended in the 1AR. At the top, sea levels are 80 feet higher. The planet is 7 degrees warmer, and the planet is burning. Big agriculture is the primary driver of this environmental crisis because it is exhausting necessary resources that the environment relies on. That causes extinction and it makes the planet uninhabitable, which not makes this turn. That two, our 1AC evidence is that industrial agriculture does not maximize the goal that they're setting out to accomplish. It does not increase yield. It does not increase food security because if homogeneous food varieties are vulnerable to shock, then long-term yield will decline drastically because of floods, droughts, hurricanes, and extreme weather events that ruin growing seasons. This is not net offense. It is sufficiently neutralized given our evidence is good and their evidence is bad. They've also not read a card impacting out the meaning of industrial agriculture because they have not said that food shocks result in extinction. They have not read a food security event, which means that even if yield drastically declines, it does not matter and it pales in comparison to our seed diversity impact. Go to the topicality page. I'm not totally sure the interpretation that the 2R chose to go for, but we need both of them. The affirmative is a sector. The affirmative is not just a sector-specific regulation. It is targeting the anti-competitive business practices that undermine food sovereignty throughout the economy. The 1AC does not specify a particular sector. Does not specify a particular sector at which this is targeted, which means that we need all of their interpretation evidence, regardless of plain text in a vacuum. But there are two counter interpretations in my mind. One, anti-competitive practices. We meet this interpretation. Their interpretation is single, firm, and horizontal conduct, which the app is, because they have evidence about what anti-competitive practices constitutes, but zero cause right about expanding it. The 2R has conceded in arbitrariness decided in the 1AR, saying that we must expand the scope of antitrust laws to include more anti-competitive business practices, which means that status quo definitions of anti-competitive practices are insufficient to assume what the affirmative burden is. Two, antitrust definitions being economy-wide. This is fucking ridiculous and imprecise. There is no reason why the affirmative has to be economy-wide. And in fact, that bans a lot of affirmative ground on the topic, like apps from GSU, like SCPs, tech, etc. get eliminated. But we also meet this interpretation as well because the app does apply economy-wide. I think this is just an argument to support pick competition and not an independent voting issue. But it was 2 minutes of the 2R. You should not vote on this because a topicality is a death penalty, which means you should be reasonable in quarters of the NDT. Go to the pick. Two arguments. First, the block dropped a theory argument. There are no new arguments in the 2R. Counterpoints that can beat solely off of expanded the scope of the core antitrust laws are a voting issue. Our argument is that counterpoints that functionally do the app but call it non-antitrust should be excluded from debate. The counterpoint is this because it is simply to implement a regulation and just calls it antitrust and then says that avoids the DA. It is basically a word pick that allows a negative to capture any inherent feature of antitrust like consideration of competition, treble damages, judicial proceedings, and replicate it in another legal regime, siphoning any substantive antitrust keyword from the app. They did this when they said the counterpoint just does the rule of reason as well. They did not make a no-link argument. Their only argument was the impact turned it in topicality. T is not a reason why they need this counterpoint. We are winning it. Now, a permutation to the counterpoint and codified an antitrust law as a second argument. It answers any competition argument because they've conceded our evidence from the 1AR. She has third that codification in antitrust law would make it core antitrust law. It solves the link for the same reason reason that the counterline does. Their argument is the counterline creates a clear legal regime that's not feared by businesses. The permutation takes this new, clear, and modified Sherman, Clayton, or the FTC to insert it there. The negative read no competition evidence. We've read multiple parts that said once you take the counterline and codify it within antitrust, it makes it an expansion of the scope of the core laws, which was their only possible competition argument. That's not severance or intrinsic because counterline only competes because it does not expand the scope on its own, but the reputation does. Business would not negatively read to the label of antitrust if the new regime is clearly articulated. Otherwise, the counterline links as well because it proves they're scrutinizing the substance of the policy. Now go to the econ disadvantage. Impact defense pretty much zeros the disadvantage. One, our Liao evidence is pretty mishandled. It happens in economic decline causes war in any phase of the business cycle. Empirically, wars happen when economies have been growing often, just as if not more often than during economic decline. That proves the correlation between economic growth and war. They've also conceded empirics downturns will not justify war. Diversionary theory is disproven, which is the only meritorious reason why economic decline would cause lash out. The two-in-our posturing about external scenarios predicated off of 3D printing and manufacturing, etc. The fight against China is irrelevant because the only term related to that is they have conceded the impact defense on the other page, saying that emerging tax regulation is nonsensical and it fails because it's impossible to globally cooperate over norms, which means they can't rein China in and they will inevitably win the tech race. Now, antitrust now should thump the disadvantage. They've led one car from 2020 to 2021, Con is a crusader and sparking massive lack of confidence in the economy. That's from evidence from 5 days ago. 2, companies received increased volatility now. That's all Volkov evidence from February. 3, the GOP will win the midterm and those who politicize antitrust because they hate tech, because they think that big tech like Facebook, Twitter, etc. are censoring conservative ideas. Which, yeah.
Good debate, USC.
Good debate.
AFDAC is incoming.
Debate. Neg doc sent. Let me know if anything's missing.
Half doc sent.
I think we're in. Hey, Kevin Clarke, are you secretly there?
We're missing Kevin.
Oh,
So
gotcha.
give us- Okay, we're all good.
Okay, congratulations to both teams on reaching the quarterfinals of the national debate tournament. The decision is a 3-2 for the negative from USB. And
I don't know how much Northwestern wants here.
I would like to learn the split and nothing more.
Yeah, I vote F. It's been a pleasure judging you. What's up?
Yeah, no, just a split.
Oh, sorry, you voted F.
I voted F.
That's all I got the stomach for right now. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks for judging. Yeah. Wait, what happened? Sorry, my internet cut out.
It happened.
Okay, all right.
Thank you all for judging. We'll see you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks.